It starts with a feeling, you know the one, the feeling of being watched when you know you are completely alone. Imagine this. You've just checked into your hotel room after a long day of travel. You're tired. You just want to wash your face, brush your teeth, and fall into bed. You step into the bathroom, flick on the bright, sterile light, and you lean over the sink. You turn on the water, splash your face, and when you look up, you see it. It's not just your own reflection staring back. There is someone else there, standing just behind you, a silent figure in the mirror. This is where our investigation begins, into a series of terrifying and unexplained events that shook travelers across 2 continents. Between the years 2008 and 2014, a wave of chilling reports began to surface. They came from ordinary people, business travelers, families on vacation, solo adventurers. The stories were remarkably similar, originating from different hotels in various cities across Europe and North America. These people, complete strangers to one another, all described the same horrifying experience. They saw a man in their hotel bathroom mirror, a man who wasn't physically in the room with them. He was only in the reflection. This wasn't a fleeting glimpse or a trick of the light. It was a sustained, terrifying encounter that left witnesses paralyzed with fear, questioning their own sanity and the very nature of reality. The initial reports were often dismissed. Hotel staff would hear these frantic stories and assume the guest was overtired, had too much to drink, or was simply mistaken. They would check the room, find nothing out of the ordinary, and offer a polite but skeptical apology. The police were sometimes called, but they too would find no evidence of a break-in, no sign of an intruder. But the stories kept coming, trickling in from London, Paris, New York, Chicago. Each report added another piece to a disturbing puzzle. Who was this man? How could he appear in a mirror and not in the room itself? Was this a widespread hoax, a mass delusion, or something much, much darker? We are on a quest for answers. We want to understand what these people experienced. We travel to the darkest locations seeking evidence of the paranormal. And this story is one of the most compelling we have ever encountered. The consistency of the accounts is what makes it so credible. It points to something real, something that defies our understanding of the physical world. The fear in the witnesses' voices is genuine. The trauma they carry is undeniable. We must look at the evidence, listen to the stories, and confront the possibility that when we look into a mirror, we might not be alone. We might be looking into a world that is looking right back at us. The power of these encounters lies in the details. When you have multiple witnesses separated by hundreds or even thousands of miles describing the exact same entity, you have to stop and listen. This wasn't just any shadow or a vague apparition. The man in the mirror had a distinct appearance, and the descriptions were chillingly consistent across every single report. Witnesses described him as a tall, unusually thin man, almost gaunt in his build. He appeared to be middle-aged, perhaps in his late 40s or early 50s, with a pale, almost sallow complexion that suggested he hadn't seen the sun in a very long time. His face was the most memorable and disturbing feature. His features were sharp and severe. He had high cheekbones, a long, straight nose, and thin lips that were always pressed into a neutral, emotionless line. He never smiled. He never frowned. His expression was one of complete and utter emptiness, a blank slate that made the experience even more terrifying. His hair was dark, short and neatly combed, but it was his eyes that truly haunted those who saw him. They were described as dark, deep-set, and intensely focused. People said it felt like he was looking right through them, not just at their reflection, but into their very soul. His gaze was cold, analytical, and completely devoid of any recognizable human emotion, making the encounter feel deeply unsettling and predatory. He was always dressed in the same attire, which added another layer of strangeness to the mystery. He wore a simple dark suit that looked slightly outdated, something from another era. It was clean and well pressed, but it seemed to absorb the light around it, making him stand out against the bright background of the hotel bathroom. He never wore a tie. Just the dark jacket and a crisp white shirt buttoned all the way to the collar. This consistent, almost uniform-like clothing made some people wonder if he was some kind of official, an inspector or a member of a strange organization. But his presence felt anything but official. It felt profoundly wrong. An intrusion of the highest order. The fact that a tourist in Rome, a businessman in Toronto, and a student in Berlin could all describe this identical figure is what elevates this from a simple ghost story to a genuine paranormal mystery. There was no collaboration between these individuals. Many of them never went to the press and only reported the incident to hotel security or the police. Their stories buried in internal reports, yet the face of this man, the details of his suit, and the unnerving emptiness in his eyes remained the same. This phantom was not random. He was a specific entity, appearing with a specific look for a reason we have yet to uncover. We are dealing with an intelligent, repeating manifestation. The behavior of the man in the mirror was as consistent as his appearance, and it was this behavior that truly terrified witnesses. He never spoke. He never made a sound. He simply stood there a few feet behind their reflection, perfectly still. His presence was one of absolute silence and stillness, a stark contrast to the panic and chaos erupting in the mind of the person seeing him. The figure would just observe. His head would sometimes be tilted slightly to one side as if he were studying a fascinating but insignificant specimen under a microscope. This act of silent, intense scrutiny was described as being incredibly invasive, a violation that went beyond physical presence. For those brave enough to keep looking, they would notice subtle, deliberate movements. After a few moments of complete stillness, the man would very slowly raise one hand and touch the surface of the mirror from his side. Witnesses described seeing his fingers press against the glass, but they could feel nothing on their own side. There was no sound, no vibration, just the visual of his hand making contact with that invisible barrier. Sometimes he would trace a line on the mirror, his finger gliding across the surface with an eerie smoothness. This slow, methodical action was a performance, a deliberate act meant to be seen, meant to instill a deep and lasting sense of dread in the observer. The climax of these encounters was often the most perplexing part. After a minute or two of this silent observation, the man would simply turn around and walk away. He wouldn't fade or vanish into thin air like a typical ghost. He would turn his back to the mirror and walk deeper into the reflected room, disappearing from view as if he were walking into another unseen space that existed just beyond the silvered glass. And then he was gone. The reflection would return to normal, showing only the terrified witness and the empty bathroom behind them. The room was just as it was before. Nothing was moved. Nothing was disturbed. The only thing that had changed was the person staring back at their own reflection. In the aftermath, a strange phenomenon was often reported concerning the mirrors themselves. Many witnesses claimed that after the encounter, the mirror would become inexplicably cold to the touch, a deep, unnatural chill that lingered for hours. In a few rare but significant cases, the mirror would later develop a fine hairline crack, appearing without any impact or cause. It was as if the encounter had put a physical strain on the object itself, leaving behind a scar. This physical evidence, a cold spot or a crack, was the only tangible proof that something extraordinary had taken place. The man was gone, but his chilling presence had left a permanent mark, both on the mirror and on the mind of the person who saw him. With every incredible story comes a wave of skepticism, and the mirror mystery was no exception. When these incidents were investigated by hotel security or local police, the results were always the same: nothing. Security footage from the hallways outside the rooms never showed an unauthorized person entering or leaving. The electronic keycard systems confirmed that only the registered guest had accessed the room. There were no fingerprints, no footprints, no stray hairs. Absolutely no physical evidence to suggest an intruder had been present. From a law enforcement perspective, no crime had been committed. There was no proof, and without proof, there was no case to pursue further. This lack of evidence became the cornerstone for the skeptical argument. The press, when they did cover the stories, often treated them with a tone of light amusement or dismissed them as urban legends. They were fascinating tales for a slow news day, but not something to be taken seriously. Journalists and commentators pointed to the logical explanations. They suggested these were cases of overactive imaginations, fueled by the unfamiliarity and inherent creepiness of a sterile hotel room. They argued that the stress of travel, combined with jet lag, could easily cause people to misinterpret shadows or reflections, leading to vivid waking dreams or hypnagogic hallucinations, those sensory experiences that occur on the boundary between wakefulness and sleep. Psychologists and scientists offered more clinical explanations. They proposed that the phenomenon could be attributed to the stranger-in-the-mirror illusion, a known perceptual distortion. This can occur when someone stares at their own reflection in a dimly lit environment for an extended period. The brain's facial recognition system can begin to fail, causing the person's own features to morph and appear distorted, sometimes taking on the appearance of another person entirely. They argued that a tired traveler staring into the bathroom mirror could easily fall prey to this trick of the mind. The consistency in the descriptions they claimed could be explained by the power of suggestion. A story spread online and created a template for what people expected to see. While these rational explanations sound plausible, they failed to account for the sheer specificity and consistency of the reports long before the phenomenon became widely known. Many of the initial witnesses had never heard of such stories before their own experience. They don't explain why so many different people under different circumstances would hallucinate the exact same gaunt man in the same outdated suit. And they certainly don't explain the physical after effects like the cold spots or the mysterious cracks that appeared in the mirrors. Science provides a comfortable answer for those who fear the unknown, but for those who have seen the man in the glass, these explanations feel hollow and incomplete. They feel like an attempt to rationalize an experience that is, by its very nature, beyond rational comprehension. For 7 years, the mystery remained a collection of chilling anecdotes, dismissed by many and, well, feared by a few. There was no hard evidence, nothing to bridge the gap between witness testimony and physical proof. That all changed in March 2015 in the picturesque city of Bruges, Belgium. The manager of a small historic hotel was conducting a routine inventory of rooms that were scheduled for renovation. In one particular room, he noticed the bathroom mirror was not sitting flush against the wall. Thinking it was just a loose fixture, he decided to remove it to have it properly resecured. What he found behind it changed everything. It was the breakthrough we had been waiting for. Tucked into a small, crudely carved-out cavity in the wall behind the mirror was a small, sophisticated piece of equipment. It was a compact, high-definition digital camera, wired to a tiny transmitter and a long-life battery pack. The lens of the camera was positioned to peer through a minuscule, almost invisible hole that had been drilled through the silvering of the mirror itself. It was a two-way mirror, but not in the traditional sense. It was a standard mirror that had been expertly modified for covert surveillance. The manager immediately contacted the authorities, believing he had uncovered a sick, voyeuristic operation. But the truth, they would soon discover, was infinitely stranger and more disturbing. The police seized the device and were able to access the footage stored on its internal memory card. What they saw was not what they expected. The camera's memory contained dozens of video files, each one showing the bathroom from the mirror's perspective. Most of the clips showed hotel guests going about their normal routines, brushing their teeth, washing their hands, fixing their hair. But then there were other files, disturbing files. The footage showed the very same man from the witness reports. He was seen standing in the bathroom, sometimes for hours, completely motionless. He would stare at the camera, his dark eyes unblinking, before turning and walking out of the bathroom, seemingly into the adjoining hotel room. The most terrifying part of the discovery was that the hotel's own security system and keycard logs for that room showed no record of anyone, other than the registered guests and cleaning staff entering or leaving the room during the times the man was recorded. He appeared on the hidden camera's footage, but not on the hallway cameras. He was inside the room, but somehow left no trace of his entry or exit. The discovery in Bruges was a bombshell. It proved that the man in the mirror was not a hallucination. He was real. He was physically present. But he was operating by a set of rules that defied logic and technology. A ghost in the machine who could be seen by one camera, but was invisible to all others. The Bruges discovery was the spark that ignited a firestorm. Once the story broke, it was picked up by international news agencies, spreading like wildfire across the internet. The initial skepticism that had surrounded the mirror encounters began to dissolve, replaced by a mixture of morbid curiosity and genuine fear. People who had previously been too afraid or embarrassed to share their own experiences now felt validated. They realized they were not alone. A torrent of new reports began to pour in, not just from Europe and North America, but from all corners of the globe. It became clear that this was not a localized phenomenon, but a global one. Suddenly, stories were emerging from hotels in Tokyo, Sydney, Rio de Janeiro, and Dubai. The details were frighteningly familiar. A traveler alone in their hotel bathroom, a sudden feeling of being watched, and the appearance of the same gaunt, pale man in the dark suit. The sheer volume of new reports was staggering. Online forums and social media groups were created, dedicated to sharing these encounters and trying to piece together the puzzle. People shared photos of their hotel rooms, circled suspicious-looking mirrors, and exchanged theories about what could be happening. The Mirrorman, as he was now being called, had become a modern-day phantom, his legend growing with each new testimony. What was most compelling about this new wave of reports was the increased vigilance of travelers. Armed with the knowledge from the Bruges case, people began actively inspecting the mirrors in their hotel rooms. They would shine their phone flashlights on the glass, looking for the telltale pinhole of a hidden camera. They tapped on the surface, listening for hollow sounds that might indicate a hidden cavity behind it. This proactive searching led to more discoveries. While not all of them involved cameras, people found strange markings, unusual fixtures, and mirrors that seemed out of place. The collective consciousness had been altered. The simple hotel mirror was no longer a trusted object, but a potential source of violation and fear. This global awakening turned a series of isolated incidents into a connected worldwide investigation, largely driven by the public. It was a crowdsourced ghost hunt on an unprecedented scale. The flood of information was overwhelming, but within it, patterns began to emerge. Certain hotel chains were mentioned more frequently than others. Encounters seemed to happen more often in rooms on higher floors. And most importantly, a new, cryptic clue began to surface with alarming regularity. A small detail that had previously gone unnoticed, but now seemed to be the key to the entire mystery. The investigation had gone from finding a ghost to hunting for an organization. As more people began to scrutinize the mirrors, a crucial piece of evidence started to appear consistently. It was a small, discreet label, often hidden on the back of the mirror or etched faintly into a lower corner of the glass itself. The label was easy to miss unless you were specifically looking for it. It was a simple string of characters printed in a clean, blocky sans serif font. The label read RM237, property of 0x. This small inscription was the first tangible link between the disparate cases. A calling card left behind by whoever or whatever was behind this terrifying phenomenon. It was the solid clue we paranormal investigators always search for. The alphanumeric code, RM237, immediately sparked intense debate and speculation among amateur sleuths and paranormal researchers. The RM was widely believed to stand for room, but the number 237 was much more evocative. It was a direct and unmistakable reference to the haunted room in Stephen King's novel and Stanley Kubrick's iconic film adaptation. In that story, room 237 is the site of a horrifying supernatural encounter in a hotel bathroom. Was this a deliberate homage, a clue left by someone who was a fan of the story, or was it something more, a symbolic key meant to signify a place of great paranormal energy and fear? The reference felt too specific to be a coincidence. The second part of the label, property of 0x, was even more enigmatic and sinister. Who or what was 0x? The term suggested ownership, that these mirrors were not standard hotel property but belonged to a specific unknown entity. Was 0x a person, a secret society, or a government agency? The 0x designation is often used in computer programming and hexadecimal code, leading some to believe it pointed to a highly technical, perhaps even digital origin. This theory suggested that we were not dealing with a simple haunting, but with a technologically advanced operation that was using paranormal methods for reasons unknown. The label implied a level of organization and purpose that was deeply unsettling. The discovery of this label was a turning point. It shifted the focus from a ghostly apparition to a potential conspiracy. The mirrors were not just randomly haunted objects, they were manufactured, labeled and distributed items. They were tools. This raised a terrifying question. If Zero X was an organization responsible for these mirrors, what was their goal? Were they studying fear? Were they attempting to open doorways to other dimensions? The RM237 tag felt like a taunt, a piece of dark, theatrical branding. It was a sign that whoever was behind this was not only methodical but also had a twisted sense of humor, turning a symbol of pop culture horror into a real-world nightmare for unsuspecting travelers around the world. The consistent appearance of the Mirrorman and the cryptic RM237, property of Zero X label, pushed investigators and witnesses toward a radical and terrifying theory. What if these objects were not mirrors at all? Not in the way we understand them. A mirror is supposed to reflect light, to show us what is already in the room. But these mirrors seem to be doing something else entirely. They seem to be showing a place that existed independently of the hotel room. This led to the chilling hypothesis that these mirrors were not reflectors but windows. Windows to another place, another dimension, or a parallel reality. A portal. This theory suggests that the man in the mirror isn't a ghost haunting the hotel room, but a living being on the other side of this window. When a guest looks into the mirror, they are essentially looking into his world. He is not an intruder in our reality. We are observers of his. This would explain why he doesn't appear on hallway security cameras. He never actually enters our physical space. He remains on his side of the barrier. The Bruges camera footage supports this. The camera, placed behind the mirror, was essentially on his side of the window, allowing it to record him while cameras in our world saw nothing. The mirror itself is the gateway, the threshold between his world and ours. Investigators and theorists who subscribe to this idea believe the organization Zero X has discovered, or perhaps even engineered, a way to create these dimensional windows. They manufacture these mirrors, label them with the RM237 designation as a signifier of their paranormal function, and strategically place them in hotels around the world. Why hotels? Perhaps because of the constant flow of transient emotional energy, stress, loneliness, excitement, which might be necessary to power or activate these portals. Hotels are places of temporary existence where people are disconnected from their normal lives, making them perhaps more susceptible to such an experience. This theory, while sounding like science fiction, provides a framework that explains almost every bizarre element of the mystery. It explains the man's physical appearance on one camera, but not another. It explains why he can interact with his side of the mirror, but not ours. It explains his ability to simply turn and walk away, disappearing into his own environment. It transforms the mirror man from a passive spectre into an active observer, or perhaps even a guard stationed at a window between worlds. The question then becomes, if we can look into their world, can they or he eventually find a way to cross over into ours? The cold spots and cracked glass might be signs that the barrier between these two realities is not as stable as we think. Today is June 28th, 2025, and more than a decade after the peak of the sightings, the mystery of the Mirror Man remains unsolved. The reports have become less frequent, but they have not stopped entirely. Every few months, a new story emerges from a different corner of the world, a chilling reminder that the man in the glass is still out there watching. The RM237 mirrors are still hanging in hotel rooms, their true nature hidden in plain sight. We are left with a collection of terrifying testimonies, a few pieces of cryptic evidence, and a host of questions that challenge our most fundamental beliefs about the world we live in. The silence from any official source is deafening. The core question remains, who is the man in the mirror, and what is the purpose of this global operation? Is he a prisoner trapped in a sterile, room-like dimension, forced to observe our world? Or is he a scientist, a researcher from another reality, studying humanity from behind the safety of the glass? Perhaps he is something more sinister, a scout for an invasion we cannot yet comprehend, patiently waiting for the barrier to weaken. The organization known only as Zero X is the greatest enigma of all. Are they a human group that has mastered interdimensional technology, or are they a non-human intelligence using these mirrors for a purpose that is entirely alien to us? The incidents force us to reconsider our relationship with everyday objects. We trust that a mirror will show us only what is there. We trust that a hotel room is a safe, private space. This mystery shatters that trust. It suggests that the world is layered, that unseen realities may exist parallel to our own, separated only by the thinnest of veils. It implies that we may be under observation by entities we cannot see or understand. The psychological impact of this idea is profound. How can we ever feel truly alone again, knowing that any reflective surface could potentially be a window, a one-way ticket to being watched? Ultimately, the mirror mystery serves as a stark and terrifying warning. It tells us that there are things in this universe that we do not understand. There are pockets of darkness hidden within the light, and there are secrets buried just beneath the surface of our reality. The next time you check into a hotel, when you stand before that bathroom mirror, take a moment. Look closely. Look beyond your own reflection. You might feel a chill run down your spine, the unnerving sensation of being watched, and you have to ask yourself the final, terrifying question. Is it just a reflection, or is someone on the other side looking back? We believe